To fill that shortfall, you mentioned, basically taking a red pen and going through these programs. Do you see the tax system needing to be changed in order to help fill that hole in addition to cutting spending?
Well, as you know, we tried to pass a tax reform package. Right. We need to broaden the base. We rely on only a few little revenue conduits, if you will, but there are many, many other conduits that we can derive some income from, and we're not going after them.
So you mean like raising taxes?
Not necessarily raising taxes, but just looking at other areas that we can derive income from. Now, for example, when you go to Hannaford's and rent a DVD, like a movie, you pay a tax on that. I don't know, it's $5 plus tax, right? When you go down the street here to the movie theater and go into the movie, you pay no tax on that movie. So you're sitting, whether you're sitting at home watching the movie, you've paid a tax to sit at home for that movie. But when you go down the street to Cinemax or to watch that movie, you paid whatever, $7 or $8 or $10 for that movie, no tax on that, but there's no problem paying $8 for a bottle of water, right? And then how much more for a popcorn? Right. They really, charge you a lot for all the ancillary products, but you didn't pay a tax for the movie.
So you think we should have a tax, like for instance, on those movies?
I think that we should look at that. There's an imbalance there, and it's all discretionary dollars, right? Do you need to go to the movies? Do you need to go to the movies, Justin?
No, but at the same notion, that's a tax increase. You mentioned that it's not you're deriving. I mean, that's just rhetoric you're talking about. People will see that that's a tax increase that you're talking about.
Yeah, it is a tax increase, but it's discretionary.
Okay.
I don't want to go after items that are necessities. There are needs and wants.
Right.
Right? Do you need it? Do you want it? There are needs and wants.
Have you talked to some of your constituents about that? Because I know, walking out on Main Street, I bet you talk to anybody, and if you ask them, hey, would you mind, paying some extra money for a movie, they probably would say no, rather than saying yes. I mean, they voted it down, the last tax initiative that would increase taxes on candy and some of this discretionary funding that you were talking about. Voters voted it down, so they don't want this. So what are you talking about in terms of that?
But what the real story that didn't get out was we reduced by broadening the base, we are reducing everyone's income tax from 8.5% to 6.5%. And if you go to the movies, which you don't have to go to the movies, you don't have to do that, everybody's state income tax comes down from 8.5% to 6.5%. It's huge.
I mean, well, yeah, exactly. You would be, if that did go through, which it didn't, so people didn't want it. But if it did,
they don't want to reduce their state income tax from 8.5% to 6.5%.
No, they voted it down because they didn't want the increase in the sales tax. I mean, you saw the numbers. They didn't.
We weren't increasing the sales tax.
On a number of items that had not been taxed, they essentially you would be increasing it. If you're not taxing a particular item and then all of a sudden you're taxing an item, that's an increase in the tax. I don't know how you want to, rephrase that, but that's the fact. And the fact of the matter is people did vote against lowering their income tax and raising certain taxes on a number of items. They did do that, correct?
Broadening the tax on certain items, right.
All right. So they voted against that. So what would you say moving forward, in taking into consideration what your constituents want and what voters want, how would you then take a look at the tax system to make it work for them? Because they didn't vote for that. So what would be the next solution?
The next solution is we need to step back and look at how we can work with the Maine State Chamber, look at all the chambers, because the chambers really want to make this work, but we need to work more in cooperation with them and find a way to make it work. And I don't have the solution today, but we need to work cooperatively with them and find a solution. Because they do want this to happen.
Right.
Because when I have sat through hundreds of hours of public hearings and hundreds of hours of workshops, and one of the big obstacles to bring new businesses to the state of Maine is our tax system. The owners of these businesses don't want to pay 8.5%.
Right.
So if we were able to take that off the table by reducing the state income tax to 6.5%, or some other number, we're not married to 6.5, but it's some other number less than 8.5. That's off the table. All we have to do are reduce our energy cost, make us more competitive in our transportation system. Because if you build a widget in the middle of Maine, getting that widget to that end user is a problem for us in Maine versus somebody building a widget in New Hampshire. You agree? So there are a number of issues. It's not just our tax system.